am Alex Radical from Board Game Co. and today I'm reviewing Spellrift Legends from Dogori Games. This is a prototype, all rules and components subject to change, and I'll have a link to the crowdfunding campaign down below. I actually should note, by the way, I do have the non-miniature version of this prototype, so various figures over here are effectively just tokens, which granted I assume is very hard for you to see on camera. It's hard enough for me to see it in person, probably much harder to see it on camera, but there are things on this map. But with that said, Spellrift Legends is effectively a roguelike game. You can play this solo, or you can play it with a bunch of players, taking your various characters, and then going on a quest to eventually defeat the particular boss. In the prototype, I only have the one boss over here, the Eye of Nothingness, who I will be attempting to take out before the many possible ways that the game ends and we lose the game. Whether that's the Doom track mounting, whether that's all the characters being dead at the same time, whether there's too much terror on the board, there are a bunch of ways you lose and only one real way you win. Level up, power up, get to the point where you can tackle the boss directly in final conflict, and then win that final conflict taking them down. That's the core loop of what you're doing. But that is an oversimplification of what you're doing every single turn, which you basically go through a round cycle of drawing a bunch of cards, bumping up your track over here to be able to spend this resource, and then being able to use this, to be able to use your legend to move around the board, to spending it to go ahead and move from location to location, and spending it to re-roll dice when you are taking tests or gaining in combat. But the basic cycle is you draw a bunch of cards for the start of phase, you take your movement around the board, spending your legend or spending various cards to discard them to move from location to location, and then having some sort of encounter at that location, whether it's engaging with one of the quests that the world has thrown at you, whether it's just resolving a card from that location and often doing some sort of test at that location, reading the narrative, rolling dice for that test, and then dealing with the pass or fail effect of that test, or possibly moving into a horde of enemies over here, and then facing off against the enemies. Where's my enemy card? Facing off against those enemies, going through rounds of combat where you roll dice to assign their intent. There's a little chart over here of what this enemy is going to be doing. You'll roll dice, resolve their intent, how they're attacking, how they're defending, and then hoping to power through their stats over here, tracking their health on the sideboard, making sure you roll higher than the defense, and being mindful of the various abilities. That's basically the arc of the game. You draw cards, you gain resources, you move around the board, you engage with something, or you rest. You also can rest. There's like 5 things you can do in your turn, but most often it's going to be engaging with a world card, a quest, a monster, resting, things like that are going to be what you do as you attempt to move forward and progress. As you do all this, you'll be gaining experience. Every 5 experience results in leveling up your character, adding more cards to your deck. Your characters have giant decks of cards over here with an absolute tons of ways you can be upgrading their core starting cards. You have those starting cards, but then as you add more powerful cards to your deck, you'll have cooler abilities, more better exploits, better things that go into play, giving you a stronger tableau for your characters. More dice rolling, more mitigation. You will get these cool cards that will make you power up and feel progressively more, stronger. You're going to feel progressively stronger as you go ahead and take on the various enemies, and then hopefully eventually the boss themselves. So it's a roguelike. Move around the board, power up, try to survive, and make your way to the final boss. There's a lot more nuance and details to the rules. I'm trying to distill the core concept of what you're doing, which it is a roguelite experience where you'll be engaging in a lot of tests, either tests against cards or combat tests, utilizing your cards for those, which I guess one more thing before we dive into thoughts and opinions. Let's talk about those cards over here. Over here we have some of our starting cards, and there's always a top half and a bottom half to each card. The top half is going to be used for combat, giving you the various dice you can roll. Speaking of which, enemies often have dice that they're weaker to. They have various attack types that they're weaker to, and so strategically planning around your hand and what you have before you dive into combat with an enemy is a big part of the game. But then the bottom is going to be either dice you can use for your various general tests, not combat, or alternatively various abilities, instant abilities, exploit abilities, things that will help you out with those cards. So with that, let's go ahead and dive into my thoughts and opinions on this game, what I like, don't like, conceal is not liking, all of that. Let's start off with what I like. There's a lot to like in this game because you are powering up. If you like roguelike games, this is going to give you that powering up feeling where you start off weaker than I would ideally like, but by the time you do ramp up, your deck can be significantly stronger as you dive into that final combat. And having those more powerful cards, that is the whole charm of the game, at least to myself. There's a lot of things, we'll get into some of the things I don't like, unfortunately I have those as well, but there are the core concept of powering up your character in order to take down the enemies, that's the main arc of what a roguelike does, and Spellrift Legends does give you that feeling. You have a variety of characters over here, there's 3 in the prototype that I have, and each one has a giant deck of cards and a different playstyle. Your characters come with built-in abilities, well you can't see that over here. I'm just realizing I'm showing you things you can't see on camera. Your character has built-in abilities over here that you can be utilizing. And you have your giant deck of cards. You have a starting quest that you have that other players don't know. Well, that's going to, once you accomplish that, that's going to give you another ability. So there are a lot of things that will power up your characters, making you feel stronger, while the Doom track ticks ever onwards, giving you something you have to be working towards to eventually take down that boss. There's a lot of choices as far as what you do based on this sprawling map and how you're going to explore this board. Do you go deal with the terror that needs to be taken care of? Do you possibly go deal with the monster, because monsters are what causes the Doom track to increase as it goes through it? Are you focusing on your personal quest? Are you just wandering around location to location to gather the various cards? Each of these locations over here, whenever you end your turn in a location, if you just wanted to go ahead and explore that location, you're going to draw a card from this. You're going to deal with the card, taking the test. You'll gain something if you pass. You gain something, you lose something if you fail. But you have these cards that will always, when you go to that item's the main location, that location's main place, when you go to the A in each individual location over here, you have to trade in those cards for the reward on the back over there, which gives you a lot of things. You are slowly powering up. You have to choose. Do you face off against the enemy, or do you possibly delay things a little bit, which will cause Doom to increase, but hopefully you'll have a better hand of cards with more dice that work against their weakness, which could be key. So there is a lot of strategic choice as far as how you pace yourself and which threats you can afford to take on at any given point. And so there's a lot of strategic choice over here, combined with the roguelite aspect that powers things up, and that's basically the main things that will drive this game forward and the things that I like about this game. Unfortunately, there are a bunch of things that I don't like, and there are some big things here that really hold back the experience for me based on how I engage with this game. And the first thing is going to be the tests are so frequent. Now, I've been a huge fan of Dragori Games' other games. From the original Tenaris Adventures, I thought Odalin was great, and they always have had dice rolling as a core concept, but this is the first time in their games that I have really felt that the dice rolling felt far less fun, possibly. And I'm not entirely sure why that is. Maybe just the guards you have to pass through effectively, meaning the status you have to hit on those dice felt significantly harder compared to Tenaris. And so there's a lot of dice mitigation. There's a lot of spending your resources in order to re-roll dice. A lot of overcommitting cards in order to ensure you can actually get what you want. And the dice rolling felt like such a huge barrier with a lot of mitigation and time and resources needed to be spent in order to power through that. Now again, it does get better as you power up. As you get stronger, as you're rolling more dice, it'll be better, but you do take some time to get there, which means the first chunk of the game, the first half of the game, there's way too many failures and just luck of the die, literal luck of the die, which is, I mean, you're rolling dice, it's luck of the dice, but there's a lot more dice rolling than I'd like. It's a very frequent aspect of the game, and it doesn't always go the way you want. In fact, more often than not, it's not going the way you want, which I overall found to be a slightly more deflating experience here relative to the other games. It's not that you can't get past it. You absolutely can with the right tools, the mitigation, the resources. They do give you the tools to get past it, but I can't say it's as satisfying as an experience to have to constantly be spending my cards and my resources in order to get the dice results that I need. So while I'm not saying you can't get past it from a difficulty standpoint, it just became less fun relative to what I want. The other thing is moving. Moving is something that, again, you have to spend cards and your legend points over here to constantly be moving around the board, which means that you're constantly choosing between how much of your resources are you spending just to move. You don't really get free moves. You get resources each turn, and you spend those resources to move, but you might spend those resources on other things. And again, this sprawling map over here, I've played this both solo as well as two-player, and again, I don't know how high it would go, because the more players you add, the more the map would feel like you're taking advantage of it, but also the less time you're doing your own thing. So I'm not sure if more players is a solution, but it's a big sprawling map with players having to go to different places and frequently spending resources to get to those various places. And that definitely meant that between the dice rolling and between the moving, I spent far more of my resources and time doing things that felt a bit more like busy work than engaging in the fun parts of the puzzle, which is facing off against enemies, making strategic choices around how to defeat them, and then powering up my characters. Those things are present, but the ratio of the things that felt like busy work relative to the ratio of things that were satisfying building up my character in Tableau was less than what I would like for a typical game like this. As far as I can see, others not liking, there's a few small things on top of my own personal complaints. First of all, over here, the private quest that you have is a bit interesting in the sense that you're not supposed to tell people what they are, but that didn't necessarily... It was weird because depending on the quest you had, sometimes it's like, okay, I'm just doing my own thing and I'll achieve it, no problem. Other times you have things like this, win a combat while battling with an ally. And that means like I'm kind of trying to get my teammates to help join me for combats, but I'm trying not to be too weird about why. No, come help. You're like, yeah, you got this. No, come help. And so the nature of the private quests being kept private, it didn't add to the experience for me. It didn't take away from it either. It just meant you sometimes had weird things like, no, gosh gee, let's do that thing that I can't tell you why it's so important to me, and then players very quickly pick up at, oh, like you probably have a quest that I have to work towards. So it didn't bother me, but it felt a little bit sometimes like a rule that didn't necessarily add to the experience. And then I'll also say that the monsters didn't feel necessarily as variable as I'd like. The individual enemies you're facing off against, they have an ability, have some stats, but for the most part, they don't feel like significantly different in how they operate, which didn't overly bother me, but might be a factor for you. As far as final thoughts on Spellrift Legends over here, I really wanted to like this game. As a huge fan of Teneris Adventures, as a fan of what Dogori Games has generally put out, as a huge fan of roguelike experiences, I was very excited for this one because of the sheer amount. Like, there's tons of cards. There's tons of cards, both in the general game and each of these locations around the board, but also these full giant decks of cards that each character has with a ton of upgrade potential and comboing and trying to find that. I was really excited for this one. And there are things that I enjoy about the game, but the core loop of what you're doing, the core loop of the fact that a lot of the time you are spending resources, time, effort, and energy just focusing on the movement and the dice mitigation means that as much as there are things that I enjoy in this game, there's also a lot of busy work that wasn't enjoyable and didn't add to my experience that kind of took it away from me. This may well be one that you like. For me, unfortunately, Spellrift Legends is one that I would pass on. As far as other game recommendations, if you want that dice rolling and that world building that Dogori Games does so well, definitely check out Teneris Adventures, or alternatively Teneris Expeditions if you want their shorter, more accessible version of it. And if you're looking for a good roguelike board game, Slay the Spire still is one of the best, both in video games, but also in the board game space. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you found this review helpful, and as always, I hope you have a good one.